Hello everyone, and in today's video we will be discussing the topic Secularism from your class 12 Sociology chapter, The Challenges of Cultural Diversity. So in this particular topic we will be studying about the Indian secularism, which has some key differences from the Western secularism that you have to keep in mind. So let's start. Secularism is among the most complex terms in social and political theory. So basically, secularism is not a straightforward word with a single easy definition. It's a complicated idea, especially when we talk about how the societies and governments should deal with religion. Think of words like democracy or justice. Everyone is going to agree that yes, they are good, but when it comes to defining them precisely and then putting them into practice, this can be very complex. Okay, so is secularism, and you cannot expect a one-word answer for what is secularism because it is a concept which has many layers within. Now, in the Western context, the main sense of these terms has to do with the separation of church and state. So basically, when people in the Western countries like the USA or France talk about secularism, their primary understanding is that the government, which is the state, and the religious institutions, which is your church, these should be completely separate. These should be completely separate. They should not interfere, like the government should not interfere with the matters of the church or the religion, and the religion should not interfere with the matters of the government. So for example, in the US, the government, they cannot establish any official religion because it is not going to consider the religious institutions. And so these religious schools, they will not receive the direct government funding for help or support. As we see in India, this does happens. So this is basically the Western model of secularism that we have also studied in grade 11. Okay, the separation of religious and political authority marked a major turning point in the social history of the West. So historically in the West, the church had immense power over political matters. Okay, let's go back to history. So before all of this has happened, where the state is not interfering in the matters of the church and the religious institutions is not interfering with the matters of the government, before that we're talking about the history. Here church had immense powers. Okay, church was very powerful over the political matters as well. But when they got separated, there it was a huge change because it meant that rulers were not necessarily guided by the religious leaders, and the citizens, they gained more individual freedom from religious control. When you think about the historical power of the Pope over the European kings, this separation meant that kings started making decisions based on the state interests and not on the church doctrines. Okay, this separation was related to the process of secularization, or the progressive retreat of religion from public life, as it was converted from a mandatory obligation to a voluntary personal practice. This is the essence of this topic. Basically, what it is trying to say, that secularization is the process where the religion, okay, so let's understand it here. Secularization is defined as a process. In this process, what happens? Religion gradually, slowly, okay, consciously is going to lose what? Its influence. From where? From the public life, and from the public sphere it is going to become more of a private and individual choice. That is what secularization means. Process where religion is gradually, slowly losing its influence from the public life, and it is more becoming a private and individual choice. Earlier, what happened? Religion was compulsory, often compulsory. Now, from public, it has moved to private. So it is up to you. It is you who is going to choose how to practice, what to practice. Now, in medieval times, attending church might have been mandatory, and your life was heavily influenced by the religious rules. But now, in many Western countries, religious is a personal belief. You can practice at home or in your place of worship without the government forcing you to do so. So, secularization is a process. Okay? Secularism, it is an ideology. Secularism is an ideology or a principle. The difference between secularism and secularization should be clear to you, wherein secularization is going to be the process where the religion is losing its influence and it is becoming more private and individual choice, whereas secularism is going to be it is an ideology, it is a principle. So now, secularization in turn was related to the arrival of modernity and the rise of science and rationality as alternative to religious ways of understanding the world. The move towards secularization, wherein the religion is becoming less public, happened alongside the growth of modern thought. Because as the science and as logic started, they started gaining more importance, they started looking for explanations, logical thinking and rational thinking beyond just religious ones. So before the modern medicine, people might have relied solely on prayer for healing. But with the rise of science, they started understanding diseases scientifically. So thus shifting thinking also contributed to religion becoming more personal. Okay, so here modernity, science and rationality, all of these things are interconnected to the concept of secularization. It's about the Western model. In the second paragraph, we are going to see the Indian meanings. So, the Indian meanings of secular and secularism include the Western sense, but also involve others. Okay, it is a very crucial line because it tells us that while India understands the idea of separating religion and state like the West, its understanding of secularism is more broader and includes more aspects. So we see that Indian secularism is not just a copy-paste of Western secularism, it is unique. The most common use of secular in everyday language is the opposite of communal. What is communal? Firstly, communal refers to favoring one religious group over others, which can lead to conflict. So in India, when we say someone is secular, we often mean that they are not communal. Let me give an example of communalism, wherein, let's say there are 4 religions, A, B, C, D. So in communalism, you are saying that one religious group is being favored upon. So secularism would mean that you are not favoring anyone. So secular means being impartial and that you are treating all the religions equally. Treating all religions equally. Instead of favoring any one particular religion, you are treating all the 4 religions equally. So a secular person or state is one that does not favor any particular religion over others. Now, if a politician speaks only for Hindus or only for Muslims, they will be seen as communal. But if they are speaking for everyone, they are secular. This is a key difference, wherein the Western secularism focuses on separation, Indian secularism focuses on equality and impartiality among religions. Okay, so whether it is an individual or it is the government, being secular means treating all the religions with the same respect and not showing preference to any one. Now, if the government funds religious schools, then it must fund school of all religions and not just one. That is how you are treating them equally and impartially. You are not favoring anyone. Secularism in this sense is the opposite of religious chauvinism, and it need not necessarily imply hostility to religion as such. So, what is religious chauvinism? Firstly, religious chauvinism is an extreme and aggressive favorism of one's own religion. Secularism in Indian context is what? It is against this. It does not mean being anti-religion or hating religion. It means being fair to all religions. One thing is that you are treating all religions equally. One thing is that you are hating the religions except your own. when we are talking about religious chauvinism, it is a very, very extreme and aggressive form wherein you're defending and just, protecting your particular religion. It is an aggressive favoritism. So a secular person, he is going to respect all the faiths. And when I am talking about someone who is, anti-religious, so this anti-religious person would be someone who might mock or criticize all faiths. But Indian secularism, it is about respect and not rejection. It is about respect, not rejection. So, in terms of the state-religion relationship, this sense of secularism implies equal respect for all religions that we have talked about, rather than separation or distancing. For example, the secular Indian state declares public holidays to mark the festivals of all religions, which is the core of Indian secularism, that instead of a strict wall of separation like in the West, the Indian state is maintaining what? Equal respect. Equal respect for all religions, that the state can engage with religions, but it must do so impartially. The Indian state is providing public holidays for all religions, be it Diwali for Hindus, Eid for Muslims, Christmas for Christianity, Guru Nanak Jayanti for Sikhs. This is not separation, this is equal treatment. Okay. Now, some complications have been created by the tensions between the Indian state's simultaneous commitment to secularism along with the protection of minorities. So, here, sometimes it gets a bit tricky, wherein India aims to be secular, equal respect for all religions, and also protect its religious minorities like Muslims, Christians, Sikhs. Why they're minority? Because they're smaller in number, right? And sometimes both of these goals, to pay equal respect to all and also at the same time to protect minorities, can be, they are a part of complications or debates. So providing special protection or rights to minorities, like allowing them to manage their own educational institutions, might be seen by some as not treating all religions equally, even though the intention is to safeguard vulnerable groups. The protection of minorities require that they be given special consideration in a context where the normal working of the political system place them at a disadvantage vis-a-vis the majority community. So minorities by their very nature can be outvoted, or they can be overshadowed by the majority community in a democracy because they're smaller in number. So in order to prevent this tyranny of the majority, the state, what happens that the state gives these minorities some special considerations or special protection to ensure that their rights and their culture are preserved. Like the Indian Constitution, it is including specific articles which is protecting the cultural and educational rights of the minorities. Now, when the state provides, such protection, it also invites the critics, where the critics argue that the state is favoring or appeasing these groups instead of treating everyone equally, which creates a political debate. Favoring or appeasing means giving in to demands. Now, if a specific grant is given to a minority educational institution, some might argue that similar grants should be given to majority institutions as well, which can lead to accusations of appeasement. Opponents argue that secularism of this sort is only an excuse to favor the minorities in return for their votes or other kinds of support. So, those who oppose that these minorities' protection often claim that politicians, they're using secularism as a pretext to win minority votes and not of a genuine concern for their well-being. And what happens that the supporters of this, so there is one group opponents who basically say that all of this is happening for the votes. Supporters, on the other hand, they argue that without these safeguards and the majority community's culture and the way of life might dominate, so the minorities, they would lose their distinct identity and rights. So in this scenario, secularism without protection would just become a tool for the majority to impose its will. For example, if there is no specific protection, a majority might try to ban minority religious practices, arguing for uniformity, which would be detrimental to minority rights. Okay, so this highlights the fear of assimilation or loss of identity for minority groups if special protections are absent. So in this particular topic, you will be able to understand that secularism is complex. It is not a single definition, and there is a difference between the Western and Indian secularism. When the Western part basically focuses on the separation of church and state, and India will provide equal respect for all religions, and that the state can interfere, but it must be impartial as well. Then Indian secularism and anti-communalism. In India, secular often means anti-communal, which means that we are not favoring any one religion. And Indian secularism also does not mean hating or rejecting religion. It means respecting all of them. And what happens? The complication that becomes is the minority, right? Why should we protect the minority? So that we can prevent the majority dominance and we can ensure fair representation. What is the criticism that we learned? Accusations of favoritism or appeasement. And what was the counter argument? That without these protections, minorities might lose their identity and rights. And we also studied about the example of the public holidays. This was all that we have covered in this particular video about secularism in detail. That was all. Thank you.